Grimerica this afternoon. We're going to be chatting with someone across the pond, as they say. But first, the great Graham Dunlop. How's it going, buddy? In the new studio.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for all your hard work in here. It looks good. It sounds even better. There should be less echoes, so the sound might be a little different this time. But yeah, we've got Matthew Williams with us here. Red Pill Junkie suggested that we have this guy on, and we did a crop circle episode, and I've purposefully not really done too much research on Matthew. I listened to a little bit of the Paracast with him, but I stopped it before. I kind of wanted to stay fresh and not be have this preconceived perception and questions and stuff like that. So it's going to be a really interesting chat. Matthew Williams he's been into UFOs for quite a while. The ufologist kind of back in England or Wales, I think, back in the 90s, and then he got into crop circles and actually making crop circles. So we're going to chat with Matthew about all this. So welcome to Grimerica, Matthew.
Thanks very much for having us.
Yeah, it's good to have this perspective here. So I guess like we mentioned there when we first started chatting, how about the little bit of history on how you became interested in crop circles and UFOs, I guess, for that matter?
Well, I was sort of a young lad. I had books on the paranormal, and as you sort of grow up, people sort of hand you books on the unexplained and myths and funny things like that. And I kind of didn't really know whether I believed a lot of the stuff I read in those books, but I wasn't a believer back then.
Right.
But I think it was about age 19. I had a UFO sighting myself when I was driving a car across a mountain road and saw something on the side of the hill, like a triangular shaped object shimmering, and it seemed to be sitting on the side of the hill. And that kind of made me reflect on my previous readings of books and things, and made me think, well, I used to wonder about these people who had these experiences, wondered whether they were telling the truth or not. And here I am. I've now had an experience. I shouldn't, such a sort of skeptical stance on where people are coming from, and maybe I should relook at what they're saying they've seen. So I kind of became a bit of a UFO investigator. Ended up in Wiltshire after sort of some time, and I went to see the crop circles. And people told me, you want to see something really good, go and see those crop circles, and I was like, what do you mean crop circles? I mean, I was a UFO researcher, if you can believe this, and people were saying like, yeah, crop circles, and I was like, I don't know what you mean, crop circles. And it's like I'd read the books, but somehow I'd managed to kind of skip across these boring little things that I wasn't interested in, called crop circles. I was, sort of not my interest area. And they said, yeah, these things come down, nobody knows who makes them. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow, that sounds great. If that's still hanging around, you can go and have a look at it. Unlike a UFO, which obviously usually flies off and you can't pin it down. Ghosts, which don't hang around, but here you've got a subject matter, crop circles, and they're there for you to visit and study. So I thought, this has got to be a winner. Went down to Wiltshire, spent a little bit of time with the people and the circles, and I wasn't getting the same sort of vibe that many of the other people were from the crop circles.
Literally the same vibe.
Yeah, sort of people would be telling me, sorry, it sounds like you got a bit of a cold there.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and the people would sit in the circles and they would meditate and they would say, yeah, I'm feeling the energy, and I wouldn't be feeling it, and I would want to feel it. I was wanting to get into this thing just the same way that everybody else was. And then I kind of discovered this alternative viewpoint on crop circles, which is that people make them. And I was interested to meet the people that said they were making them. I wasn't offended by this, whereas a lot of people who research this subject are extremely offended by the existence of people who they say claim to be circle makers.
Yeah.
But
and
I was
thinking,
in
the Doug and Dave days, isn't it?
Yeah. Doug and Dave, had sort of not long been exposed in the newspapers, and I sort of came in a little bit after that, and I kind of thought, oh yeah, Doug and Dave, yeah, it's a nice story, but as everybody tells you, how could they make all these crop circles? Two old blokes, there's too many of them. How could these old guys do this? And it turns out they didn't, obviously, do the circles. If you think about it logically, well, there must be more people out there than just Doug and Dave making crop circles. And that's how lots of crop circles get made. So what you were looking at back then was a number of teams who were working in Wiltshire, and I tried to seek them out. I tried to find out what they were about and whether or not I believed them, and I had to kind of do this secretly. Initially, they didn't want to speak to me about this stuff. They were very secretive, and quite rightly so, I think, when you realize, what sort of persecution a circle maker gets from crop circle believers. But nonetheless, I tried to speak to them. They weren't really keen to speak to me because I was known as a UFO researcher, so I was kind of treated with a bit of caution. But myself and a friend, Paul Damon, we decided to make some little circles of our own just to see whether people would immediately dismiss them or whether or not they would believe in them, whatever. And we weren't experienced at that point. We were just, sort of virgin, I suppose is the best word to use, virgin circle makers. And we went out and made some very small, basic, messy designs and sat back and watched what people would say about them. And strangely enough, people came along and said they were real.
There must have been some people that said they weren't too, though. I mean, did you get a mixed
yeah, it's surprising actually, because we actually went out of our way with some of these early ones to make them as messy as we possibly as we could, to see just how far down the rabbit hole or the toilet hole you want to sort of take this thing. But yeah, it's really bizarre that the more messy they got, the more people got excited, like as if they were looking at alien writing and they were trying to decipher them, and it was just scrawl. And people were getting very excited. So we thought, well, okay, they love the rubbish. Why don't we try and do something a bit better? So, we started making stuff that was a little bit more involved. And, similarly, people were just going crazy. So it didn't matter whether it was bad or good. They liked them either way. And, we kind of thought, well, there's not a lot of objective research going on here. And
this was remind people when this was. This is when, like 92, 93 or?
Yeah, I got into it in 1990, and it wasn't very long before I was actually making a couple of little sort of trial circles.
So how did you end up finding all these people that were making the circles? Like, did you just hang around those pubs in the area, or like, how did you actually track them down?
Well, it's kind of funny because when you're sky watching, it's a bit like, I suppose, Sedona in terms of a place to go if you're thinking about a community that's based around the paranormal. Right. Then Wiltshire is kind of like Sedona in that respect. There's a lot of people come here because of the crop circles and because of Avebury, Stone Circle, Stonehenge. Lots of ancient monument sites. And, if you're hanging around somewhere like the Barge Inn pub, you're going to bump into people interested in crop circles, UFOs, conspiracy theories, and they're all coming there to stay in the campsite. And also you'll be brushing shoulders with, a lot of the time, with circle makers, but you won't know that.
Right. And even back then, that this was a popular hangout?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, when I got here, it was the Barge Inn was definitely the focal point. And it hadn't always been that way. There were a few other places that were pubs before I came, but it seemed like that the pub had regenerated and become. It's right in the heart of the area where the crop circles appear. For example, Eastfield in Alton Barnes and Honey Street and all around that area. That is literally the central focal point for where many of the best crop circles have appeared, such as going back to the Led Zeppelin album cover, that was in the Eastfield, and the pub is a short walk from that field. So,
yeah.
And so anyway, hanging around the pub, I was eventually made aware of who these circle makers were supposed to be. And I approached some of them, initially they didn't want to speak to me, but coming back after making a couple of circles and explaining to them that we'd made some circles, suddenly the attitude changed. They suddenly wanted to speak to us, and it was kind of like, oh, you did those. We wondered who that was. Oh, great. Yeah, let's have a chat then. Cool. So you know the deal now then. You know that people make the circles. And we're like, yeah. And it was kind of like all the doors were then open to us for conversation, whereas prior, being a researcher, we were treated with great caution. So that's how I got involved. And since then, I've been making circles up till 2000, which was when I got arrested for making circles. So that's something we can come back to a little bit later on if you wish.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
and then from there on, I've been kind of doing my best to educate people to the crop circles, why people make them, what it's all about, and the fact that there are genuine paranormal experiences had by people visiting man-made crop circles.
So, do you think is that so? We're saying, do you think it's like 100% of these circles are made by people in some form?
Well, I think you're getting very close to that figure. Reason I say that is because I know most of the people making the circles, and every year there will always be a couple of circles we don't know who has made those circles, but give it a few years down the line, some of those people who are making circles who are secretive and didn't know how to approach people, they'll eventually kind of come forward and say, yeah, we were making circles back then. That was one of ours. This was one of ours. And you kind of put the pieces together. Generally, there's not many pieces left to the jigsaw puzzle. And usually the pieces that are left, i.e. the unknowns, are usually the very simple circles, such as the ones that started this whole phenomena off, just basic simple circles, not a design, not with these walkways or crisscrosses or dumbbells or things like that, just swirl patterns. And unfortunately, what you tend to find these days is that crop circle researchers are only interested in the designed crop circles. The more complicated the design, the more that these researchers believe that couldn't be made by men, and the more simple the design, the more that they say, well, that's obviously some idiots just playing around and practicing. And of course, from my perspective as a circle maker, and from other circle makers' perspectives, they've completely got it the wrong way around, because we as circle makers kind of say to ourselves, well, who's making that little swirl one? Who would make that? Who would bother to do that? Whereas we know that the more complicated ones are more evidence of an intelligence, and let's face it, it's going to be most likely the intelligence involved is human.
Okay,
so,
let's get into some of the minutia then, because obviously, I've been interested in this field for many years, right? Since I saw Colin Andrews probably in their early to mid 90s in Seattle at some symposium or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And it is pretty hard to believe that these 300 foot long circles made in the few hours of darkness, and they've also got all this supposed scientific investigation on the nodes and how these things aren't even damaged and how they're bent over, and they've done samples in other fields with the crops. So how do you explain all that stuff without just saying it's all a bunch of garbage?
Well, seeing as you're you came in as a believer, I'll have to say now, yes, they're all made by aliens, and
I'm not a believer. I just don't think that there's one answer explaining it all. That's all.
You see, I have to live this kind of like dual life where I have to gauge the people I'm speaking to, and I think you do want the truth, So, but this is the kind of game I have to play, unfortunately, of kind of sounding the person out first. How offended are they going to be by learning this truth? And then you have to kind of, smooth the edges off for people. And I tell them honestly about the paranormal stuff. But once you start getting into the nitty gritty and start explaining things like the nodes and the nighttime stuff and all the scientific data, then it starts to go down this kind of negative avenue, which I can explore as well.
That's fine.
Let's do that.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, this sounds fun to me.
Okay, here we go. Right. So nodes. The common perception of plant bending having caused some sort of nodal damage, i.e. a node is like a knuckle. So if you've got your fingers on your hand, you've got your knuckles, or your elbow, you've got the end of your elbow. And the plants are the same. They've got these nodal points, and they can bend at these points. So if you flatten the plant down to the ground, what it tries to do is it tries to correct itself at these node points by bending like a limb and pointing itself back up towards the sunlight. And there's a technical term for this. It's called phototropism. And every plant, in a field like wheat, barley, rape, they will all try to do this. They will all point towards the sunlight. So much so that with time-lapse cameras, you can actually observe the plants changing direction and actually moving backwards and forwards towards the light. They actually follow the light. Now, if you bend a plant down to the ground, you flatten it with a board or your feet, provided the stem isn't damaged and the plant is still alive, it will try to do this correction. But where the node bends, where it's the joint and it bends around, there's a certain amount of stress where there's a stretch. And where that stretching takes place, quite often the plant will split at that joint area, and it will start to seep a little bit of fluid. And that fluid will then come onto the outside of the plant, will turn to a dark color, sometimes described as black by some people. And this is basically yeast. It's come from the center of the plant, from the stalk, onto the outside, and it's like it's oxidizing with the air, and it changes color. Now, this has been reported by people as being an effect of energy, some sort of like
microwave or something.
Microwaves, yeah. And it's interesting that you use that term microwave, because I didn't quite say microwave, but you said it, so you obviously you've heard it from somewhere.
I've heard that.
You've heard this, and a lot of people have, and it's amazing how people will hear these things like nodal damage, microwaves, and blown nodes and cellular changes. Blown nodes. Yes. Yeah.
If you're gonna giggle, Darren, giggle into the mic, please.
Oh, okay. Blown nodes. Yeah. Definitely something you go and see a doctor about quickly. You've got the terminology you're using. It comes from basically one camp, and this is a research group called BLT, Burke, Levengood and Talbot. That's what BLT stands for. And anyway, the guy called Burke has kind of departed the project. The guy called Levengood, who's supposed to be the scientist, the doctor, he is now no longer with us. He passed away a few months ago, I believe, actually. So he's now dead. And the only person left is Nancy Talbot. Now, the problem comes that this scientific research of taking samples from the fields and sending them off in the post to this chap, Mr. Levengood, was that he was claiming to be a doctor. He was claiming to be a scientist and have credentials and qualifications. It turns out they're not a doctor. And because of this, some of his papers, which have been submitted to peer-reviewed journals, have been rejected, which in the case of one sort of journal, I think it's called Physiological Plantarium or something like that. They said that, it's the only time they've ever had to reject an article was by Mr. Levengood, this guy that claimed to be a doctor, because he didn't have the credentials to put the article there. And what he was saying in the article was rebutted by many people who kind of saw it afterwards. So this is where these terms come from. They come from this chap.
Okay, and that camp goes back to the early 90s too, like, because when I think Linda Moulton Howe had all this stuff out in her books too back then, right? So that's coming from that same camp.
Yeah, well, I can come back to Linda in a bit, for another sort of angle on this, but the same sort of camp. They go back quite a way, and they're very. I suppose the best description is very forceful. With the way they put their information out there. This is kind of like a scientific fact, and we have a Dr. Levengood, and it's backed up by proper science here. Well, the thing is, the blown nodes, right? It's a well-known effect. It's called the phototropism. There's nothing mysterious about that at all, and it's well known by plant biologists all over the world as a natural effect of plant physiology. So for somebody who claims to be an expert, in plant biology, Mr. Levengood, to come along and say, no, this is totally abnormal, totally unusual, you kind of end up, when you find out that the guy has lied about being a doctor and kind of, I know it's not nice to speak, ill of the dead, but unfortunately we're having to live to this day with the aftermath of bad research, which is kind of out there. As you yourself know those terms, we are still battling today to try and tell people politely that they should rethink all they think they know about crop circles, because it's come from some camps that didn't quite tell it how it was.
Right. And they're still following that sort of paradigm right now, even.
They still, to this day, and it's you hear the same points put across. I mean, I can stop people. I mean, I'm not saying I don't want you to ask me these questions, but I can literally, so I have a conversation with somebody, I can stop them and I can say, and you're about to say microwave damage, and they go, yeah, and you can complete people, you can complete people's sentences, and it's very evident to me that with this subject particularly, everybody is taking on board research that's done by other people that they don't know for certain is correct, and they just run with it. And I urge people to do their own research, to recheck these things that are taken as facts, because they're not always facts. Really, you do have to redo your research, and don't be offended if you find out about the circle makers, because they're not the bad guys. There are some bad guys out there, but it's not the circle makers.
Right, right. Okay, so let's put that sort of scientific stuff aside and get to the actual process, because again, so you've got a team of guys.
Yep.
Sneak into a field at night, 4 or 5 hours darkness or whatever, and you make this huge, massive, 300 and something circle, crop circle, and somehow nobody sees you guys. Like, is it really that easy to like describe that process a little bit so people understand, that it's doable?
Okay, well, we'll do like a hyperspace leap here to the paranormal subject, and I'll say, hey, even though I make crop circles, I'm a big believer in the paranormal. Still am to this day, and I've had so many weird experiences in crop circles. It eclipses everything else.
Right.
So if you're talking about not being seen, how's about this before we go back to the reality of making crop circles? How's about this for an experience? I made a crop circle whereby when we entered the field, we could see people were camped out in the far corner of the field with telescopes, and they were doing a sky watch.
Okay.
And we said, this is crazy. We can see them. If we can see them, then they can see us.
Yeah.
So there is no way we could get away with doing this formation. And yet, me and my friend were kind of standing there, and I said, do you know what, though? I get this overwhelming feeling that we should do this. We should get out there and make this. And he said, yeah, I feel that too. And I said, well, you know what the feelings are like. You should go on them with this type of stuff. So we did it. We made this crop circle in bare, you could see us. We could see them. They could see us. So we did this circle. We just carried it on in a very, very type of attitude. Good feeling about being there. And when we completed it, we went away, asked for information for anybody who knew who those people were in the morning. Yeah. And it turns out that they were already telling their amazing story of being in a field doing a sky watch, and right underneath their noses, and they're even at the highest point of the field, so they're looking down. We're at the low point, they're above us looking down into where we are. So they report that they saw nothing, they heard nothing, but in the middle of the night a fog bank came down over that part of the field, and in the morning the fog lifted and there was the crop circle, and yet we were there able to see them. It's almost like a one-way mirror, where we can see them perfectly, but they can't see us.
And there was no fog bank to you guys?
No fog bank to us. But I mean, it sounds crazy. You want to hear some of the other stuff I've got to talk about a bit later on. But that's just maybe one example of why people don't see people when they make crop circles. I can give some rational explanations now as to why there may be instances where people don't see and don't hear people making crop circles, but
okay, so that would be good. But as far as just like the logistics of it goes, if people were watching you and they were able to see you, would it take you like 5 or 6 hours to do one of these big ones? Like how, would you guys like have it all? All kind of planned out like a high-tech robbery in one of those films. You go in there, tick, 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 it's all done, and you're out of there. Do you do it under moonlight, or do you do it in the dark? Like, do you worry about how much light there is from the moon? Or
do you bring lights?
No. I mean, any lights that you have would have to be like one LED, maybe that you hold between your fingers, and you close it off between the gap in between your fingers
Right.
to kind of shine just down on enough paper to see the design and a couple
Right.
of a couple of measurements.
Yeah.
So we work from scaled up designs. Basically, that's how it's done. We make a design on a page, and then we have to take measurements from that, write them down, and then we multiply them by a factor of number, and then that would equal either meters or feet.
Right.
And then when we go out there at night, there's no real way that you could see accurately. Even in daytime, you could see accurately what you're doing and whether you got the angles correctly. So everything has to be measured, and the way we measure it is with measuring tape. And sometimes we use a laser level. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like a tripod with a little laser pointer on it, and it basically has a compass rose with 360 degrees, and you can kind of point that out in 360 degrees. The laser will point out at night so you can see it.
Yeah.
And as you walk along, you can keep it on your chest and you get straight lines, or you can it can be used to save a bit of time and increase accuracy. But the basic tools are very simple. It's not really like a high-tech robbery in many respects.
Yeah.
What you do have is a plank of wood, which is affectionately referred to as the stomper board. And that's what you actually use to lay down large areas of the crop. And it has a rope so that you can hold it. You push it down with your foot, and you hold the whole thing against your foot by pulling up on the ropes, and you just walk forward. So it's like having a gigantic snowshoe on, but turned sideways. But to sort of use a descriptive term. But the other tools are the tape measure, which is a surveyor's tape measure. So you get one of these in a Home Depot type store, and usually about 30 meters, which is about 100 feet. Sometimes you can get the double or triple size ones, quite big ones. They have a handle on the side. You can wind them in.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, the reason there's a very specific.
All this stuff.
There you
Perfect.
go.
Don't get any ideas.
And there's a big old crop of canola right over there.
I don't condone crop circle faking, Darren. So none of this is going on in.
If they're all made by
door.
people, though, then I'm just an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I see. That's the way it's going to be. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
You'd be surprised what happens to you if the police stop you and they're going to breathalyze you and they search the car. If you've got a board and a tape measure, they'll suspect you of being a crop circle maker in Wiltshire, but you probably get away with it in Canada.
Yeah.
But,
I hear they wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
You know what's cool though? This right under the flight path. Like next morning, the pilots would see.
And there are
for
fields
sure.
right around here too.
I wonder if it works with canola. Like, do you need it? Is there certain crops that work better than others? Like, if you're going for a crazy big design, do you shoot for, say, wheat because it's easier to manage?
Canola's quite hard
nodes
because it's. Yeah, it's a hard crop to do, canola, because it's so thick, and basically it tends to snap a lot more, and you've got to use a lot more force to press it down. Whereas with wheat and barley, those two are the premier crops for doing crop circles.
Ooh, there is a lot of barley around here too.
Is there?
Yeah. And we tend to want to work in machine planted fields, i.e. something where you had an automatic ploughing going on, then you have an automatic seeding going on, because what you tend to have then is a very even effect, a very plain canvas. Whereas if you get organic farms or where they haven't got high-tech equipment, you may get clumping, and this clumping of more density, less density will show up as kind of blemishes in the final effect of the crop circle. So what you want is a really blank canvas, something that's machined, blank. And the tram lines are obviously going to go through the design, but your eye accommodates for that. So best to look for a flat field. It's not easy to work on slopes because you're working uphill for one bit, which is very hard. Whoops. That's my dog howling there. Let me give her a treat and she'll shut up.
Sure.
Yeah. Here you go. she can hear me talking to you, and she starts howling because she's like, "Who are you talking? Who are you talking to?" Sorry. Right. So it's don't work on hills. That makes it hard. Don't work on curved fields because your measurements on one side to the other will start to get a bit skew. If as you've got a dip, your measurements will go off. Don't work in high winds because the tape measure tends to get bowed. It gets bowed out in the middle. And so you want to work on, nice nights when it's low wind, not too cold. It gets very wet, so you need to sort of think about maybe having some waterproof leggings because the condensation comes down in the night and settles on the plants, and then you're going to get very, very wet. So it's quite an athletic thing. You need to have a lot of stamina. You will get very knackered. People are surprised when we've taken them out in the past just how much work is involved. But I mean, starting at 10 o'clock at night when it's getting dark, you're prepared on the edge of the field by about 9:45. You actually enter the field by 10. People can't see you, and you leave just before it gets light. Or if it's a high condensation night, it forms fog in the morning, and you can work a little bit into the morning. People can't see you in the field, so you can maybe get an extra hour out of it if you're lucky.
Right.
So I mean, we're working till like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Have you had to leave some unfinished before?
Yeah, I mean, they don't always get finished in one night. Quite a lot of the time, people will go back and finish extra bits, and sometimes these things aren't discovered until they're finished. But then, of course,
too,
I mean, if you put the crop circle in a very well-known area, there's no way that it's not going to be discovered. So people will realize this is night 1, then night 2, something else has been added, night 3, something else has been added. But what they don't realize is that some of these circles that appear in less popular places that aren't near roads or haven't got hills nearby, they're not discovered until usually the circle makers kind of go, circle, there's a crop circle over there. Did I say that? No, I never said that, did I? And then people kind of go, oh, there's a crop circle. I've just discovered it, and then they think it's done in one night. But of course, some of the best designs have been done over more than one night, and this is often overlooked. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I did one which, when I was arrested, I kind of admitted to the one I was arrested for because I couldn't really get out of it. But I said, take this other one into consideration that I did, and it was known as the basket weave. Near my home in near Devizes, a place called Bishop's Cannings. So it was 2000, and it was a basket weave. People said that it was impossible for people to make this, because the basket was going under and over, and the weave, and it was actually a very simplistic method to create that basket weave, and it's since been replicated by myself a couple of times to prove a point, and also other circle makers have kind of incorporated it into their designs as kind of a floor lay pattern to kind of make things look a bit more exciting. So yeah, that basket weave was one of my proud achievements, and it was an accident as well because most of the time we would flatten, just in one direction.
Yeah.
And you might maybe flatten 2 directions. That would be quite adventurous. And then I kind of said to the person I was with on this night, he actually did the design, but he didn't have any idea for how to flatten it. It was just supposed to be flat. And I just, that's kind of just boring. And I'm thinking, why don't we try something different? Because, everyone flattens them. They're always flat. Why don't we try putting some patterns in? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, let's go up a bit, across, miss a bit, down, miss a bit, go up, miss a bit, go down. And then whatever's left, you flatten right and then left and then right and then left and do it like that, with the bits that are left over. And he said, I don't get you. And I said, well, it'll kind of look like a weave, And he was, I don't know. It sounds like a bit of a silly thing. I don't know if I want to risk it, just flatten it. I said, no, it'll be great. It'll be great. So he was kind of reluctant to do it. But when he did it, at the end, he kind of said, I'm looking at this now. This was nighttime, obviously. Your eyes aren't really very well adjusted. He looked at it and he said, this is a fucking mess, And he convinced me. He said, you've wrecked this now.
Oh,
you've totally wrecked this. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry. You know, it was just an idea, never know. And it's like, so we all went away thinking, well, there's a sort of like half-baked circle, now. And in the morning, people were enthusing. They'd flown over it. They were going nuts about it. And the farmer actually cut it out the same morning that it appeared. But there were luckily a couple of photos taken of it, which showed it in its glory. And then kind of, my friend reluctantly said, oh, well, that wasn't a bad one after all, was it? And I said, yeah, but you told me not to do that. And I told you it was going to be good, so we kind of have this thing of, he says that it was a great circle because it was his design. And I said, well, it was a great circle because of the lay, so we were all trying to take credit for the piece that we put into it. But
yeah, that's one of the things makes it hard to believe is when you see the different swirling patterns and all that. It really does seem like it would be hard to do manually,
So is this the one?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the one that has like the swirl coming off the bottom and the top, the semicircle on top and bottom.
Oh, that basket weave one, that was done on the Eastfield. Yeah, that was one of mine. I did it as a memorial circle for my mum because she passed away. So I did that one. Even though I had been arrested and said I wasn't going to make any more crop circles, I said, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do one as a thing to say, goodbye to my mum.
Right.
And, if anyone wants to arrest me and take me to court for that one, then, arresting the man for doing a memorial for his mum, that's great, So, yeah, they didn't.
Is that like, how often are people getting pinched on that? And let's stick with that for now.
People, when you say pinched, you mean like arrested?
Yeah, like is there like a crop circle task force, or like, is there like people who are after circle makers constantly?
Well, I don't know whether there's so much a task force because a lot of hype is given to crop circles from an artistic point of view and from the alien point of view. And, I'm always amazed and excited to see the media and how these things go around the planet, how they become part of movies and things like that. So, people think like crop circles, wow, that's a big thing. But I mean, when you break it down in terms of how much crop is actually damaged, it's not a lot. So how much money is actually lost? Not a lot. And in terms of, what the police can actually put manpower behind to kind of solve crimes, they do a lot of, waving their fingers saying, we're watching the fields, we'll get you, don't dare you do this. And of course, we as circle makers know we can do it anywhere we want, anytime we want, and there isn't much the police can do about it, unless, of course, you're stupid like me and you actually engage the researchers and admit to having done one, in which case then you get a knock on the door and 16 police officers searching your house. So don't admit to it, folks, unless, of course, you like a hard time. Yeah. Yeah.
So where do we go from here, Darren? We can talk.
16 cops? That seems crazy.
Yeah,
Showed
yeah.
up at your place?
Yeah, I'm lucky they didn't. Lucky we were in the States. They'd probably come in with our guns drawn, and yeah. They came to the door, knocked the door, and they said, "You Matthew Williams?" I said, "Yes." And I could see there's a few police officers there, like 3 or 4. And he says, "We had information to say that you were involved in making a crop circle." And he showed me a design. He said, "Can you tell us about this?" And I thought to myself, well, what do I say here? Do I say, no, I didn't do this, and I can deny it, and they would be very hard to prove that it was me. But if I do that, then everyone's going to say, see, we told you so, He doesn't make crop circles. He's an arsehole. So therefore, I kind of thought about it for a second. I just said, do you know what? These blighters who have reported me to the police, they need to understand what's going on here. So whatever, you want to arrest me for it? Yeah, I did it. Fair enough. And then around the corner with these police officers, they said, well, we'll have to come in. We'll have to place you under arrest for criminal, but we'll come in and have a look around. And then it's like, then 16 police officers come into the house. And I'm like, where the hell have all these people come from? And some of them were sort of officers involved in like in high-level investigations, and they said they had to draft extra officers in to come and do this, search my place. And some of them said, we've got much better things to be doing than messing around with this nonsense, And they were very dismissive of the whole process. They were like, yeah. They saw like I had a folder like full of some copied movies. Like sort of DVXs downloaded off the internet. And one of them looked at me and goes, pirates? And I went, yeah. And he goes, I didn't see that. It's like, so, you could tell they were just like, yeah, let's just get this over with, so get this over with. This is rubbish, and similar sort of attitude to the magistrate. He thought it was kind of funny as well. And yeah, he didn't want to fine me very much. So the farmer who was trying to get £400 worth of money in damages for his crop, I brought in figures of how much the crop actually was cost, which were properly analysed figures that had come from a university on crop, how much it costs per, square, foot. And we worked it out. He said 400, my figures said 20. And the judge said, "Can you quantify why it's £400 worth of damage to the farmer?" And he said, "No." He said, "Well, I award you nothing." So that went down really well. So I walked out of the court with a small fine, and but yeah, it's there's not really a task force, but because I think they wanted to be seen to be making a statement, when they had somebody in their grasp and they really knew they had the whole thing kind of there to deal with, then they went to town on it. But really, only police officers patrolling around Wiltshire, if they happen to stop somebody and they saw boards in the car, they have been known to kind of take people's cameras out and want to look at their photos. And they take their phone and they'll want to read through your text messages to see if there's anything relating to talking about going out to make circles. So yeah, they are kind of looking for circle makers, but they don't really find them very often. They find a lot of tourists who get blamed for things, but yeah.
And the penalty doesn't seem all that harsh anyway. So you kind of got into this on the ground floor from a UFO investigator sort of an angle, and then here you were almost 10 years later still making crop circles. So what took you from being there just to kind of find the truth to become an active member?
Well, we had strange experiences whilst making the crop circles, and as we experienced very early on, even the small kind of messy things that we were doing to see how bad we could make them were being perceived by people as being wonderful. And some people were saying they'd had healing effects in them, and that they were having UFO sightings and things like this happen to them, life-changing, life-altering experiences through meditations or feelings they got by being there. So you kind of say to yourself, well, people are getting nice things from this. Let's carry this on. That's good. But as we were carrying it on, then we would having strange experiences too. We were seeing strange lights, and we were having coincidences to do with the designs that we were doing.
Yeah, can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, further down the line, some of the best experiences are where I've gone out and done a design. I to my knowledge, it's just come out of my head. I'm thinking this is my idea. And, you lay it out on paper, then you go and make it in the fields. And then on the same night, somewhere in Yorkshire, somebody was doing the same design. But we didn't even know who this team was because we've never met any teams from Yorkshire. And they were out there doing the same thing on the same night. So we're like, how does that happen? And then there are other teams who have reported this as well, whereby some even say that they have not finished the design. They've left the field, unable to complete all of the design, but when they go back in the morning, bits that were on their paper are there. They've been finished. Things have been finished. And so that's kind of weird. I mean, that I don't actually talk about that one much, but it's been mentioned on the show a few times. But when I do these kind of interviews, I always seem to forget that one. So I've got that one in this time.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy one, really. I mean, you can't just say that some other team came to finish it either. Like, how did that actually happen?
Yeah, because if it was, the other team would have to know your design. They'd have to know what you were going to do. And generally, teams don't reveal pretty much what they're going to do. Sometimes, people will say, this is one, expect to see that later on in the year. And, so the teams will know. But those are not the ones that get the copies. They're not the ones that end up as, my God, I'm scratching that happen.
Yeah, but I mean, some of them would be, you'd think it'd be concentric design, and it'd be easy to tell what's missing in it.
Yeah. There's a great one whereby some fairly new to the subject circle makers, they'd kind of seen my show and listened to the arguments about it being humans, and they decided to go out and make some. And they were kind of nice designs, but a little bit more basic. Like you'd get when somebody's new to art, catch them 3 or 4 years down the line, their art's going to be a little bit better. But these were a little bit basic, but they were out there doing some interesting stuff. But they decided to try a new technique, which was to create a spiral. Now, some people say, well, that's a bit complicated, isn't it? How would you create a spiral that's accurate? Well, one easy way to do it is to get some rope or some twine and to tie it around something like a bicycle wheel. Okay, and you just wrap it round and around and around the bicycle wheel, and then you put the bicycle wheel horizontal, so flat, in the crop circle on top of something like a tripod, and then basically somebody holds that there whilst somebody walks around, and as they walk around, they actually release the rope as they go, so the spiral gets bigger, and as they come around again, they're releasing more and more all the time, and it gently releases them to walk at quite a speed and to make this spiral pattern. So that's one way of doing it. So they thought, well, we'll experiment with this spiral. So they did 2 spirals. They did one that comes out one way, and then it goes into another spiral on the other side. So you've got one spiral on the left, one spiral on the right, and they both sort of go in. So they thought, great. And they finished this nearby Avebury, came out. This happened to be, strangely, things happened to me on my birthdays for some reason. Strange crop circly things sometimes happen on my birthday. This was one such event, because I think it was July the 13th, my birthday. I'll have to double check on that, but I think it was. I don't know about that, actually. I'll look it up now in a second. But this is the strange thing. That I knew that team. I knew what they were going to do. I knew which design they were going to do. The design was actually on their vehicle. They actually had it on their vehicle before they did it in the field. It was they had a vinyl print of it on their vehicle. So they said, yeah, we're going to do that. And strangely, in a different part of Wiltshire called Westbury, somebody went out and did pretty much exactly the same design. And the team just said, well, we didn't tell anybody we were going to do this spiral, and nobody knew we were going to do it. And who was it? Nobody was admitting to it. No teams were owning up. And so we never found out who made it. But about a year later, I was driving down the road. I saw a paraglider guy coming down into a field, and I could see another paraglider. Looked like he would be down probably in another minute or so. So I thought, well, these guys look like they're a long way from where they started off. I'll pull up the car, see if they want to lift. And being a pilot myself, it's kind of a nice thing to do to kind of, see if anybody wants a lift, or, if they've had to land somewhere. So I said to these guys, want a lift? And they said, yeah, sure. Jumped in. They said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm computer guy, techie, into crop circles. And they went, oh, crop circles. Yeah, you like those? Yep, really into that. I photograph them. I do this, that, and it. Oh, that's amazing, because you know what? We made our first one last year. I said, you made a crop circle last year? They said, yeah. I said, well, where did you do it? And they said, well, below this hill where we take off from. And I said, really? And which one? And I said, that was the spiral. And they went, yeah, it was a spiral. It was like 2 spirals. And I said, now, do you know anybody in the crop circle world? And they went, nope. I said, so you don't bother with anybody? They went, no. And I said, well, okay, give me a very good reason, one good reason why you would do 2 spirals like that. What's the significance to you of spirals? And they said, well, it's simple, because when we're flying our paragliders, we spiral into the thermals and we go up in the air with the hot air. And then when we've gone through one thermal, we'll move across, try and find another thermal, but then we'll change direction. We'll spiral in the opposite direction. And we keep doing that. We keep alternating our spirals. And we stuck it in the field beneath where we jump off the hill, so that everyone who does all this sort of stuff would see the spiral. And of course, it would mean something to anyone who flies paragliders, spiraling left, spiraling right. You see, and I went, wow, I can't believe I've met you. And this has happened many times. I've met people who've made these circles, and I've just met them in the most unusual places. And it's like there's a gravity attracting us together to meet and find out who makes these circles. And I seem to have a knack of doing this.
Darren's got
yeah.
Darren, what do you think about that as a synchronicity? That's pretty crazy.
What part of it? That him meeting them?
Well, and that spiral thing being the one that was created on the same night from somebody else. So did you tell them about that?
Well, I told they knew about it. They said, well, we didn't know who did the same spiral. They said, we saw that and we were amazed, but we thought, well, why would somebody else do what we were doing on the same night? Because we didn't tell anybody and we didn't understand what was going on there. And I said, yeah, I know who made that, but we didn't know who you were. It's like, so it goes both ways. And it was like, yep, there was a big buzz about that, but it's one of many events that's taken place. Too many to mention in a short space of time. But I mean, I've gone out to fields whereby two teams have been working in the same field on the same night, very close to each other, and not even known that the other team is there in the same field, working on similar type of designs, elongated designs, one tram width, apart from each other. Then there's the inspiration I had one night. I was in my house. And I didn't have a team, so I just got this real urge, like I must go out and make a crop circle. And I thought, well, it's too late now. I thought it's too late now to actually get a team together. But I felt like, no, I've got to go and do it. I must do something, So I got up, jumped in my car, went to this field with a tripod, and I used the tripod weighted down to act like a person who would be holding the tape. And I made a smaller design, so I didn't end up pulling the tripod over, so with the weight of my pulling on the thing. And I made this small design, and it was just a 6-fold petal design. And whilst I was there, I can remember hearing people nearby, so I was a little bit cautious, making sure that I didn't make too much noise, that they didn't discover that I was there. And I left the field. It didn't take long to create, maybe under an hour. Left the field and again, sort out, was there anybody, remembers being at that field? Did they experience anything weird? What was the sort of basic vibe? Not saying that I'd done this circle at that point, but I found out that somebody I knew was enthusing about this. It was a woman who did research into this type of stuff, and she had been there with a team and they'd been meditating, and guess what they'd been meditating on? A 6-fold petal, exactly like the one that I came to do. And I did it probably within about 300 or 400 feet of where these people were doing their meditation. And how does that happen?
Especially because it's such a spontaneous one. It's not like you planned it or anything. You decided to go out there on your own and do that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost like we've got an antenna, in our head that we don't know about, and it picks up stuff. We pick up other people's thoughts. Maybe we pick up, like the Earth. It might be transmitting things, maybe aliens or something, interdimensional, whatever it is. I believe that people pick this signal up and they act upon it, and this is where I think a lot of the inspiration for certain crop circle designs come from, is this this kind of telepathic field. The only thing I can't say, which is with any certainty, is where is it coming from? Is it coming from people, or is it coming from something else? Yeah. And that's what I'm fascinated to find out. And crop circle researchers and circle makers are still kind of asking the question of like, well, why do we get the inspiration to do that when it means something? When something else comes along, somebody else comes along and says, this was very significant, this was very important, we'd predicted this was going to happen this season, and we've written it down, we showed people, and then you've gone and done it. But the circle makers didn't know that,
Right.
All these types of coincidences. Yeah.
So hearing you say that, it kind of helps me understand a little bit, because it was hard for me to reconcile the difference between you guys not believing that there's anything except for humans making them, and then going and perpetrating the phenomena yourselves, between, like just considering it, hoaxing or faking, right? Because like I have a hard time, all the hoaxes out there, it kind of just muddies the whole water, whether it's UFOs or ghosts or whatever, why people want to like hoax things. It just drives me nuts. So yeah. But I guess if you thought originally that it wasn't a genuine non-human phenomena, then I guess in your heads you're not really faking it. You're just artists.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I wasn't offended by the concept that it was humans doing it. I just went into it with an open mind, and I found out that it was humans doing it. And then I just went, okay, well, if they can do it, let's see where this goes. And we took it to different levels. And, I've become a very big, I suppose the term, I eulogize about this now, trying to tell people, look, it's a good thing that people are making these crops. It's getting everyone to something else. It's connecting people with this other, and that's why circle makers continue to do it. We do talk amongst ourselves, and we say, well, if it was done for a joke, like this hoaxing thing, like we can do something, and people will think it's aliens. I mean, how soon is that joke going to wear out? That joke is going to wear out pretty quick. You're going to make a few circles, and that's going to be it. You're not going to do it again and again and again. 20 circles, 30 circles, in a year, and then add that up to the different teams that are out there. Then you're going to get your hundreds of circles. Why do people keep coming back to it again and again and again? Is it just because it's art and their work gets seen all over the world and loved and adored and appreciated? Yes, that is a factor. There's no point saying that the artists that are involved in this are not excited by that exposure that they get.
It's beautiful art too.
Yeah,
it's astounding. It really is.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a lot of truth in the point of view of it's better not to tell people that it's man-made, and it's better to keep an air of mystery. There's kind of like this, it's almost like a magician's code, don't show them how you do your tricks, because when you show somebody how you do the tricks, they go, oh, it was that simple, was it? Oh, I'm not interested in it now. And it's kind of like, so some circle makers believe that is a good way to operate. Keep it secret, don't tell people how it's done. And in all honesty, that actually does work towards making people more interested and more curious, try to get their heads around it and not being sure whether they can believe that people could make them. So it must be something unusual, and try to find these little nuggets and facts of things that prove 100% that people couldn't have made that one, and it's kind of like, that's the stuff that keeps this really vibrant, as an art form, which you don't necessarily get in things like, classical arts or, sort of printed mediums, photography. You don't get people coming along to a photograph and going, oh my God, that photograph makes me telepathically have strange experiences. Oh, if I think about this photo for long enough, a UFO is going to come, but it's like people come to a crop circle and they meditate, they spend the night, they skywatch, they have strange experiences, they have healings. Some people get frightened, they get scared, and but whatever it is, whatever experience you come for, whether you get a good buzz one time and then you might get a bad buzz and then you get another good buzz, whatever it is, there's this kind of like whole thing that happens with crop circles, which doesn't happen with many other art forms. And I think that's nice. But going back to your point of why people would do that, is it just art? Well, obviously it's not just art, it's something much bigger, and then the artists themselves get pulled into this, because it is something paranormal, there is something weird going on. And that's not just me and the artists kind of saying, oh, but we've got to say that, we have to say that because then that keeps people interested. Right. No, there are really, honestly, 100% guarantee you genuine weird things going on. And what I say to people is, if you think I am taking the mickey, if you think I am, pulling your leg and this is some sort of like, magic trick to get you hyped up and all that, fair enough. I wouldn't blame anyone for believing that, circle makers or hoaxers to the outsider would be the bad guys, would be the nasties, would whatever. But put that to one side, right, and go out and make a crop circle and do it with positive intent. And the way I do it is I basically look to the skies and I say, I want this crop circle to be for something good. Can the energies that want to manifest themselves manifest and make this a positive thing for whatever it needs to be? And thank you. And it's just like a sort of like a little oration, at the beginning. And if somebody new is working with us, we say, it'd be really nice if this newcomer could have a weird experience. That'd be great, cool. And thanks very much, universe. And then we sort of carry on and make the circle. And I formalize that into this kind of, way we operate, because I do believe, in what we're doing. And the end result, the end effect is that more things seem to happen because of that. More weird experiences happen to us whilst we're making because of that. So I say to people, if you want to think that we're pulling your leg, fine. But go out and make one, do it with the right intent, and do it for the universe, do it for the benefit of the humanity, do it for everyone. Don't just be doing it for yourself. Have that intent of kind of doing it for other people and opening up, to what could possibly happen looking for some influence. Sometimes we say, please protect us, please protect us whilst we make this circle. It'd be nice to sort of make sure we're looked after, like that time when the fog bank came down over us. If that's a form of protection that stops us from getting discovered, then I ask for that. So I say, great universal intelligence is out there looking down on us tonight. Please give us the energy to make this circle, make it really good, make people love it, make the design work, and thanks very much. And then we go make the circle. Do it like that and see what happens. Then if you have a strange experience, hey, I told you so.
No, that's interesting, because there's the whole occultism and symbolism and the power, and I mean maybe there is some power behind the intention and the symbolism that go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we don't understand, the designs and what they could mean, because I had books on this sort of silly stuff, which I still consider silly, like the book club. I had a paranormal book club, and they would go, here, have this book, and I'd be like, oh god, this looks like a load of crap, but I've got to buy a book to keep in with the book clubs. There's like one of the ones that gets Aleister Crowley's Book of Magic or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And what a load of bullshit. I mean, what a load of absolute. I mean, I was like, oh my god, what is this guy on about? And he's talking about doing really stupid, twisted, weird things. And I'm thinking, are you telling me if I do this that all sorts of stuff's going to happen? But a lot of it is based around symbols and incantations and making it a big thing, like a big scene out of what you're doing. And I suppose to a certain extent, kind of standing there looking at the universe and saying, this is why we're doing this. We're putting the intent. Yeah. But it's important. I feel humbled by what we've been part of, and I feel that we try not to direct it for our own ends. We try to say, this is for the universe, this is for people. So we're not like doing what an Aleister Crowley would do. We're not saying like, right, this is for me because I want to do this and I want to get money, so I'm making this crop circle because I want to get rich. No, none of that. That's just a horrible kind of way to think about doing something like that. I would never, dare do anything like that. And I've never ever dared look at the design as being kind of like, well, this is a magical sigil, like I'm going to put a message, hidden in some sort of magical code, because I don't know that stuff,
right.
Yeah. But somebody else might come along and say, oh, this means this and this means that, but I don't know that, because I mean, I put those books down, I kind of say, oh, well, I'm not interested in that sort of stuff. But I know that there are some people who are and believe that symbols do have power.
Yeah.
So
do you know who was responsible for that response to Carl Sagan's little message there?
Well, there's a way you have to be careful the way you ask circle makers questions. So what I could say is...
Or I'm not asking who, I'm just asking if you know of that.
I do, yes. And what I would say is, this is the polite way of saying it, is I like that.
Polite.
No, I like that circle very much. Yes, which is one way of saying, I think it's probably man-made. Yeah, without actually saying I know for certain it's man-made. I like that circle a lot. And if you say, do you think people could make a circle like that? I'd say, yeah, I think they probably could with enough time. Yeah. But I'm not actually saying, yes, I know that's man-made, and yes, I know who made it. Yeah. So when you ask me these questions, if I say, yeah, nice circle that, yeah, then you kind of read what I'm saying. But it's very impolite amongst circle makers to say, if it's not your design, then you have no right to kind of out somebody else's circle by saying, I know that's man-made and I know who made it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's kind of like an etiquette. I would just say, yeah, great, wonderful. I really like that design.
Yeah, no, I get that. I want to talk about a bit about your UFO sighting, because obviously that was part of the, in a way, changed something in your life. I mean, I had one when I was the same age as you. I think I was 20 when I had mine, and I was traveling in Israel at the time. But yeah, it definitely had an impact on me, because it was a strange enough thing that I still don't know.
In the cotton fields?
What it was. No, I wasn't in the cotton fields. I went and worked in the cotton fields after the sighting. But anyway, so you were 19 at the time.
Similar age, 19, 20.
Yeah. And have you gone through in your life thinking back to that and just sort of wondering what it was, or did you have any idea? I mean, I think I heard you talk about climbing up that hill to a cairn. Is there any sort of spiritual significance, do you think, to your sighting? Or
Aha, you see, listeners, he has been researching me.
yeah. I think that's where I hit the stop.
Yeah, okay. Right. This hill, which is near the Augur Vale. That's a strange pronunciation, but it's in Wales. It's Augur Vale. And oh God, if I remember off the top of my head now, it's Blaen Gwynfi, I think it's called, the place. And the hill adjoins where I live in the Rhondda Valleys. So it's called, so let's think now, it's Bwlch and the Ricos. This one's called the Bwlch Mountain, yes. And it goes over into a valley which eventually heads down to Bridgend. But this is the top of the valley. There's a transmitter up there, and just a little bit off to the left and further down is where I had this sighting, and it was beneath this transmitter, and it was sat on the side of the hill. It appeared to be in front of the hill because the hill was going up quite a steep angle behind it, but yet it was in between the tree line. So the base of it was going into trees. The top of it wasn't reaching the top of the hill. So approximate its size by the fact of where it was in between the trees and the hill, how high the hill was, how much I approximate. And I think, it must have been about 300 feet high. I approximated it. So, appreciable size. Looked at first when I spotted it as possibly being like something on fire because it was a triangle and it was shimmering and it was yellowy orange. And I went back to that area. I've climbed up the hill, and then I found out that there's a little burial mound up there called a cairn mound. Now, these cairn mounds are often stuck, so I'm told, on sites where people have had strange experiences that are known for their doorways to the paranormal realms, that people will see ghosts and things like this. And I didn't know that when I was actually driving my car, that place was directly over this cairn mound. But it's just interesting that a lot of people that I've spoken to now say, oh, that fits in very well with what we know about special sites. Stone circles are stuck on similar vortex energy points, things like that. Yeah. So, it's that was one of many experiences I ended up having. I mean, it seemed like there was a turning point in my life where either I became more sane or I became more crazy. I started seeing strange things, and I was kind of excited by it. I went with it. I honestly believe as well that if somebody wants to kind of shut down to these things or dismiss them and turn away from them, that maybe you can shut yourself down. But I was kind of excited by all the things that were presenting themselves to me: ghosts, clairvoyance, contacting the dead, going to spiritualist churches, very unannounced as well, going to spiritualist churches and having very accurate messages given to me time after time, randomly, going to these places, driving along the road, and I'd go, oh, look, there's a spiritualist church. I'd go in there and sit down, and they would just give me bang, bang, bang straight away, and it's like, wow, how the hell did they know, and stuff about me. It was just crazy. So, I mean, lots of things. I even tell this strange story about seeing the moon flying through the sky and going down behind a hill, which was really weird one night, and then I was looking for where's the moon, because it was out, and then it moved through the sky and went down behind a hill, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm like, am I tripping? Is there I haven't taken anything by mistake, or I got something, and I'm like, and I feel normal. I'm not, no strange effects. I haven't had any alcohol. I haven't taken any drugs, but I'm just thinking to myself, what the hell in your system can make you see silly things like this, Yeah. And so I keep driving down the road, and then the moon is back there again. And it's like, so I have to take my eyes away to look at a junction, and then it's gone again, and it's like, I'm just thinking, oh God, something's playing with me, but something it's either that I'm going crazy or something's playing with me, something playful, something mischievous, is kind of wants me to see these strange things and get involved, and that's why I keep
element there.
Yeah, that's why I kind of keep an open mind with the crop circles about where this stuff is coming from, because I think that that people feel cheated when they find out that it's people are doing it, but really it's not about that. It's about seeing the bigger picture, seeing that really it's not just people that are kind of being misled over where the crop circles actually come from, but so are the circle makers, because they like to feel like they've got their hands on the steering wheel, and they often find out that they really are not in control of it. They're pawns in this, much like the people who experience the subject. They're pawns too. We're all pawns, and actually the puppeteer that's playing with us all. And it making these experiences happen, causing the coincidences. That's really what this subject is about, and it's up to people which side of the fence they happen to be on. If they wish to be an observer, believing it's aliens, fine. If they want to be a circle maker, actually interfacing with that on a different level, fine. And if people want to say people can't make these things, do you know what? That makes me happy. But if they want to find out the truth, then there's also, if you happen to really dig down, you'll find there are circle makers like me out there prepared to tell you a little bit more about it if you want to know. But I'm kind of glad in a way that really I think a lot of the world kind of wants to believe that people can't make this stuff, because, that kind of does work, So.
Yeah. What about your interest in UFOs? Is that waxed and waned over the years? Where's it at right now?
Well, my belief in UFOs, I've seen balls of light whilst making crop circles, like plasma balls. Got chased out of a field one night. So, there's a UFO for you. Yeah. And trying to relate an experience about that event to a Japanese TV crew that came to the area. We were trying to relate this experience to them. And whilst we were doing this, somebody came along who had a laser pointer, and it was becoming twilight, and we were talking about this. We were talking about an event where there was a plasma ball that went through the valley, and it had been chased by a helicopter. And we were relaying that experience to this Japanese TV crew, and they wanted to do a reenactment. So we were reenacting the final part of this ball of light. We saw it disappeared off into the distance, and it went up into a mothership, which I can only describe as a mothership. It must have been about a mile wide. It was very grey, dull grey, very dark. It wasn't illuminated, but the little plasma ball that went underneath it and shot up into the underneath of it. And then this mothership just went whoosh straight up, at high speed. And myself and my friend had chased this ball of light up the hill, and we could see it going off into the distance. There were multiple witnesses that night to that ball of light, because there were many sky watchers in the area, and they saw the military helicopter interfacing with this thing. They could see that this little ball of light was almost like playing with a military helicopter, and then it shot off, went through the fields. People saw it go, and then up into this saucer, joosh, it went off. So we were relaying this experience to the Japanese TV crew. They were doing the reenactment, and this laser guy comes with his laser pointer, and we say, "Oh, laser pointer, great! Not many green laser pointers out there at this time. They're very popular now, but this was an early one. Cost him a couple of $1,000s at the time." And we said, "Hey, can you shine that at the cloud?" And he went, "Yeah, sure, I could." And we said, "Yeah, great. Shine it up at that cloud then." So he shone it at the cloud. All of a sudden, the cloud goes whoosh, like a lightning storm out of the cloud, and 3 balls of light come out of the cloud.
No way.
Yeah, and one goes off in a spiral, and one zigzags, and one goes off in a straight line. And we're all going, "Oh my God, look." And we're shouting and screaming. We go, film it. So we could see the camera guys kind of getting their cameras and sort of, doing something. And then the Japanese producer, we said, "Did they film it? Did they film that?" And he said, so he Japanese to the camera guys, and they come back, and he goes, "Oh no!" And he's like, got his hands on his head. He's like, "No." I said, "What? Didn't they film it?" He went, "No, they were filming our faces. They thought that we were doing the reaction of what it was like to see that ball of light go into the saucer on the night. So they're filming our faces." And of course, off 90 degrees to the right is the real bloody thing, and they missed it. So it's like, yeah, there's experiences like that. There was also a stealth helicopter there that night. Just after that event, a stealth helicopter came up from the side of the hill. It had no noise, and when it popped up, it went and came in front of us, and we were like, "But helicopters have to make noise. They can't be silent." And that was a silent helicopter. And it's like, so we had all these events happen that one night, and I made a friend that night. I made a friend who is a friend to this day still. The guy with the laser pointer is Dr. Simeon Hine. He is a crop circle researcher. He then came out to watch us making circles, and he's then tested the fields and found out that there was more electrostatic charge in a crop circle we made, more charge in that one that he actually watched us make than he'd tested in all the other crop circles he'd been doing over the years. And it was a fresh one. And he said, there's more charge in your circle than any of the others. So he said, well, obviously, we can't use this as a method to detect whether crop circles are real or not anymore, because we used to think the more charge there was, the more real it was. Yeah. So you kind of see that as circle makers, we're trying to help these researchers to kind of, come to the understandings that, people make these things. And yes, there are strange effects in them. Sometimes, the nodal bends, of course, that is a natural effect. Maybe there are some other effects that might have, genuine scientific significance. Maybe there are cell changes. But I unfortunately think that you have to take some of that with a pinch of salt because of, the zealous behavior of the researchers in order to prove and win people over to this, aliens make them, humans can't make them. There's a kind of meddling with the samples, meddling with the truth, and also, misreporting stuff. Like Linda Moulton Howe was there the day that guy was testing the field. She was there. We invited her along to watch the circle being made. And she saw that there was more electrostatic charge in the circle we had just made than any other design. The researcher was going mad, but she never reported that on her show. Huh. In fact, the only thing she said, she saw some people trying to make a crop circle. We didn't try, we did. We made a crop circle. That is an absolute fact. We made a crop circle, Linda. You watched us make it. It was a crop circle, not trying to make one. But what she said next amazed me, because instead of saying, and I saw some strange effects registering on some equipment, which is going to make me rethink where I'm coming from, she said, hey, yeah, they were trying to make a crop circle, and I just think they work for the CIA. And she's never said any more about that formation and seeing the effect than that. So I do bring this up on occasion, that Linda, on more than one occasion, doesn't quite tell it how it is. I happen to be, unfortunately, and don't take this the wrong way, people who are listening, that you think I get up to this stuff all the time. I don't. But the Japanese TV crew said to me that they wanted to see whether or not their camera guys who were filming would be able to tell the difference between a UFO and something we made. So would they be able to train their cameras on it and go, look, that's just lights, that sort of thing. So we got some helium and some balloons. We hired a helium bottle, sent up this strobe lights, a multiple set of strobe lights, and maybe about 3 or 4 sandwiched together. And to make the strobe lights, they were basically alarms. Like an alarm you have in a house, it goes ping, 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 about that sort of speed. They're just to let people know that the alarm is triggered or activated in some way. Well, we had a load of these strobe lights, but what happens is if you double the voltage from 9 volts to 18 volts, they now go ping, 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 like that. And we had multiples of them, so we had a few of them. So they're all pinging off at different times. And this inside, big white set of balloons, which were all tied together. And then in the middle of that was this strobe. And we set it off initially on a piece of nylon fishing wire, and we let it go near one of these fields where there was a crop circle, and then we reeled it back in, and then we let it go. And the Japanese crew was nearby with their cameras, and they were filming, and they were just like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" Now, unfortunately, they did tell us that they were going to use that in the program to show that we had made the UFO. It didn't quite get out onto Japanese television like that, because it went out onto Japanese television as, this is a real UFO. No. We don't know how that got there, and we're really amazed by it. Now, that ran for about 2 to 3 years of the show revisiting the story and talking about it again, and kind of bringing it up. And I have to say, I'm very, very glad that a scientist from Japan actually did research on this, and he put it together, and he said, look, I've analyzed it, and I think you maybe have like 6 objects all closely together with a light source in the middle, and I think they could be balloons, and maybe these are strobe, and look at the way it rotates. That could be the wind rotating the balloons around, and he totally got it, but it took a couple of years before that somebody actually worked out what that was. And hats off to that scientist, because what a great researcher. But we knew we made that. Unfortunately, the night that went out, Linda Moulton Howe was sitting on a hill nearby.
Oh.
She saw it, and she wrote it up in her book as the best UFO sighting she's ever had in her life.
Is that the one she's still talking about?
No,
maybe.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
It might be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she's and as a researcher, from researcher's researcher, I contacted and I said, look, Linda, and she, of course, I didn't get that far, because I said, hello, Linda, this is Matthew Williams. I just wanted to talk to you. And he's like, don't you ever ring me again. You bastard, clunk. And it's like, so I'm like, oh, okay. So I sent her an email, and I never got any response. But I explained in the email, look, I just thought I'd better tell you that thing you said was the best sighting. Actually, we made it, and I've got video footage of us making it and releasing it. And our footage exactly matches what that is, and I can even get the Japanese crew to speak to you if you wish, just to help you understand. Because, it's like we all like to kind of have some closure on these things, and, so I just thought you might want to know that, and no response. And when I've met her in Las Vegas, I did a speech at a UFO conference. She interviewed every single person at that conference who was a lecturer, speaker, except me. Just bypassed me. And, there was even an instance where I caught up with her in the local area, and I thought, well, let's see if I can just have a chat with her. I said, hello, Linda. And she goes, keep away from me, and then started hitting me with an umbrella, which was kind of fun. She was whacking me on the left and the right, and I was just like, this woman, So unfortunately, I liked Strange Harvest, I liked the cattle mutilation stuff, and I did give her a lot of time, but unfortunately, my brain is kind of saying to me, oh what do you actually think about this woman now? I'm rather torn in my opinions of Linda, because she's not able to kind of interface with the circle makers, so she's often a different spin.
Yeah, no kidding. So hey, I don't want to keep you too much longer here, but I do want to ask you just about ufology in general, and kind of like the disclosure movement. Not necessarily movement, but like, what's your take on the whole subject of ufology lately? And like, do you think you think it's only a matter of time before it becomes kind of recognized as a phenomena that's worth further study, or where do you think that it's at?
Well, if I look at the crop circles, for me, it's a good parallel to kind of understand how the subject matters of the paranormal work, how people get the wrong end of the stick, how you always have to bear in mind both arguments, and you never have the answers. You've got the evil government, and they've got the craft, and they're in Area 51, and you got that on one side, and then you got like, well, no, it's probably just plasma, and maybe misidentifications on the other side, and maybe the government are as much in the dark to this as we are. And you kind of put it all together, and you go, well, no, because they're in the witnesses who come forward and say, well, we knew about this, and then you go, well, yeah, but there's witnesses to crop circles having formed in 5 minutes, and we made that, and we knew it took all night to make it, and there's still somebody says that it formed in front of them in broad daylight.
Wow.
And it's kind of like you're there's a rude word, but it's like head and then head funk. Yeah. So if you transpose the rude word, the head funk, it's a bit of a head funk. When you get you kind of see this subject from my perspective, you kind of know that people make things up. You know that there's a lot of disinformation going on from the believers as much as the government. Yeah, and you kind of say, well, maybe there's room on both sides for all these arguments to kind of be true. I'd like to think there's stuff at Area 51. I've researched government documents. I've been instrumental in proving that the British government on one occasion was lying to the British public, and we had questions asked in the Houses of Parliament. The government lied. We then said, we can prove you've just lied. And they went, oh, okay. And it's like, so they this kind of stuff. I've researched in the Public Records Office many years, and there are documents there which show that our government was investigating this on a much higher level than they like to talk about. And strangely enough, I used to not clash swords, but I used to poke fun a little bit at Nick Pope, saying, "Come on, Nick, you say you were the head man in the Ministry of Defence, but these documents show us quite clearly that there's a structure that's been going on for a long time to investigate this stuff at a much higher level and to disinform the public, to play it down. And you are just the latest kind of person whose job is to play it down, and what do you say to that?" And he said, no. And I said, well, what about these other departments then? You must ask people who know about strange things, like whether or not it's a missile they saw, whether it's a plane. You're not trained in this stuff. You must be asking specialists, scientists. You must be, who do you interface with them? You say, no, it's just me. I can take care of all of it, which he had to say. Well, guess what? On Circle Makers TV, the TV little show I do on the internet, if you look for the Nick Pope episode, he admits, after leaving the MOD, for the very first time, he admits on my show, he says, "Matt, you were actually right. There were departments above me. I knew about them. You know the names because you've asked me and I denied it. Right? And you were right. You got the names right." He said, "I was in those offices every day." He said, "I used to work with the people that would investigate this stuff. And yes, I would write to the members of the public, but I was in the loop. I was in the loop. I wasn't just a letter writer playing it down. I was there finding out what was going on as well." He said, "And yeah, there was a lot more going on. There was these departments and they still do it now." And I'm like, thank you very much, Nick. That's very kind of you to admit, to say that, and admit, after all these years, it's kind of like we coming full circle and kind of, it's the truth is, it's really because Circle Makers TV is crop circle makers, and because I am a circle maker, that story has not made it out big time into the UFO community and been talked about, and because I don't think anybody wants to watch Circle Makers TV.
Yeah, no, we're going to link to it in our show notes for sure, and I'll check it out myself. But I agree. I know there's probably a real stigma around that, and people don't want to know that.
Yeah. It's the greatest story they don't want to know. Yeah.
If you don't know, now you know.
Well, see, what you don't know doesn't hurt you, and a lot of people like to live in a fluffy cloud. And hey, without crop circles being man-made, it's a very fluffy cloud.
No, well, we appreciate all your time and getting to the bottom
water,
of it and explaining it all. It's it's been pretty enlightening. It's been a good chat for sure.
Well, as I tell people, we've just scraped the surface of the iceberg here. If you watch 72 hours of Circle Makers TV, you'll see why I tell people, go and watch that, because then I won't have to spend 72 hours explaining to you what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And it's all in there. It's all in there, folks. And you might be offended at first, but I'm sure you'll get some really good information out of that show, more so than you can get in any other avenue on the internet on this subject. Unless, of course, you want to watch the Believer stuff, and then get a balance. Go watch the Believers, go and and then watch Circle Makers TV, compare them side by side, then ignore it all, go make a circle, then you know the truth.
I want to make a circle.
I know. I can tell Darren's got it going on in his head there. Oh, yeah. Boy.
Well, good luck with that. And if you need any advice, I can give it to you, as long as I'm not held responsible and can maybe visit Canada sometime in the future. I will tell you whatever you need to know.
Perfect. Well, the only circles I'll be making for the next 4 or 5 months will be snow circles. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a valid one too. People, how did they get in, without leaving any marks? If you can find a way out to do that, which I have.
I need a way. I just need some funky fucking boots.
Yeah, you need some stilts. Maybe you need to throw the snow behind you, or like have a little snow flicking machine that kind of hides your footprints. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I'll just
do
wait
the
till
circle
spring.
while you're backing out of the field.
I'll just wait
Yeah.
till spring.
Maybe people tunnel their way in. Maybe they tunnel their way under the snow, and then of course there's no footprints because maybe they never went in over the top. Maybe they tunnel out, and then people don't see the tunnel.
I'll do some snowblower circles in my driveway.
Yeah.
Practice. I think I could figure it out. I think we can make a circle. That'll be the goal for next summer
Oh
to make
boy,
a
I don't
circle.
know, man. You might have to
Yeah.
convince me still.
Yeah.
But no,
Make sure you don't tell anybody, and see the reactions. Watch how people react to it. Then it tells you an awful lot about, kind of where people are coming from. You might find somebody who says, that was not there. I walked my dog. We walked past it. It was not there. I came back the other direction with my dog, and there it was. And it's like, so it must have appeared at 11 o'clock in the morning. And they'll say stuff like that, and you will just be going, "Hey, Matt Williams, he ain't such a bad guy."
See, if we let all our listeners know before we do it, then I think our consciences are clean.
Yeah.
And we'll just gauge the response of the average Calgarian.
The local response.
Oh my God.
I wouldn't mind if it really helped somebody spiritually or healed them. After talking to you about that, it is kind of hard to be resentful for circle makers after they get a sense that you're being truthful about the intention behind it.
Well, that's what Circle Makers TV and me, that's what I'm about, because I want to show people that we're not these demons that we made out to be by the Circle's researchers. There's a whole industry there of making money, and it's hinged upon this idea that people can't do it, and once you kind of burst that bubble, then these people get very angry. So, watch out, guys, watch out, because you will get, people will have a go at you if you try this as an experiment and you explain, you were doing this, and then you say later on, yeah, that was the one we did, and you explain all that to people. You will get attacked for it, and some people will kind of lose respect for you as well, which I've had to deal with over the years. And you say, well, it's what you do. It's research. This is kind of, we're researchers, but be prepared for the wrath, because you will get some of that, but do it. Do it. I say go ahead.
And of course, all that wrath goes to Grimerica.com.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for your time, Matt. We'll link to all that in the show notes, and we really appreciate.
Yeah, this is a blast.
Yeah, it was a great episode.
This is a blast. Crop
My
circles
pleasure.
are solved for me.
Oh boy.
Well,
they already pretty much were.
Well,
they already pretty much were. Realistically, I was already 90% sure. Now I'm just the other 10.
Yeah.
Me and Graham sit on opposite sides of a small hill.
Well, yeah, that's let's get together on different sides of the globe in the summer and see if we can sort of work out a design and see if, without telling each other, let's see if there's any connection going on there.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Homework.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks
a
a lot.
Matthew,
Okay.
Thanks a bunch, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Nice to speak to you guys.